using technology is also reflective of the changing times. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5-7 years down the road, in any case, your conference will also all be on through digital mediums, and you'll probably not have the physical conferences that we probably are at the last leg of physical conferences, is what I can see, looking at the way technology is changing the times across the world. We just lost Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, a great person, somebody who gave the mantra of good governance to the nation when he was Prime Minister 15 years ago. And this government led by Prime Minister Modi has carried forward that vision of good governance and taken it to the next level. And I'll try to briefly summarize why I say so. I remember Atalji talking about his vision of a country free of illiteracy, free of hunger. He truly wanted to empower every citizen to live a decent quality of life. Sadly, he inherited a legacy of very poor macroeconomic fundamentals, and a large part of his initial tenure was spent in trying to improve the economic situation. And by the time he was able to really get the economy going on the old series at about 8.5% growth, by the time he was able to strengthen India's foreign exchange reserves, drastically bring down interest rates, and really make the entire economy an extremely strong, fundamentally very strong economy. He was voted out of office in 2004. He left behind a good legacy, a legacy where you saw some of the most game-changing reforms in the telecom sector. He left behind a legacy of huge thrust to connectivity, connectivity through the Rural Roads Program, connectivity through the National Highway Program, the Golden Quadrilateral, huge amounts of investment in different forms of transportation, be it the port sector, be it the airways, the thrust towards privatization of airports that he initiated. And we saw in that period of 6 years the shift from caste-based politics to performance-based politics. Drawing upon the strength of a robust economy, India continued on the path of good growth for a few years until the international crisis, global financial crisis of 2008 hit India. At that point of time, and I believe that 2008 was a crucial inflection point in India's economic history, the choice before the nation was to take some short-term pain, but continue to strengthen the economy in the long run. I wish in the period 2004 to 2008, when we had a good time going, we had continued to build up our overall position in such a fashion that the financial crisis could have been overcome differently from the way we finally sorted it out. And if you recall, that year 2007, 8 and 8, 9, we let all the macroeconomic fundamentals slide. We allowed the fiscal deficit to go from 2.5% to over 6% for that period. Inflation started soaring its head on the back of such huge fiscal deficits. You had a situation where interest rates started edging up and bank lending became the fulcrum on the back of which economic growth was sustained. So we had a situation where large amounts of bank loans kept the economic growth alive. We used fiscal deficit to maintain the growth momentum. And while we have a raging debate going on nowadays about whether our growth was better or their growth was better, in terms of numbers, while we can play and keep arguing whether the aggregate growth in that period was better or worse, But the fact is that growth came on the back of huge fiscal deficits and on the back of 20, 25, 30% at some points of time annual credit growth, many times creating capacities which were unwarranted. We saw that in several sectors, particularly the power sector. We saw large amounts of corruption scandals during that period, which caused the country dear for many years after that, which actually cost the nation dear in terms of international credibility. And to my mind, while the headline numbers of growth continue to augur well in 2007, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, we actually used band-aid solutions and left behind for the nation to suffer for several years after that. And the cost of those large fiscal deficits, the cost of runaway inflation, the cost of corruption, the cost of high current account deficits built up during that 2-year period was paid by the nation all through until 2014 and 15. And I think that's where India's growth story really faltered. In 2014, when we came into government, you all saw the kind of situation that we inherited. We inherited a large amount of macro weaknesses in the system, because of which we were called one of the fragile 5 economies. Fiscal deficits were high at about 4.5%. Current account deficit was quite high, probably close to 3-4% at that time. We had inflation hovering at or just about under double digits, 9%, 10% had become the norm of inflation. Interest rates were at very high levels. You will recall that in 2013, the dollar-rupee exchange rate had touched 68.8 or thereabouts, 68.80, 68.90 in 2013, at which point the Reserve Bank came out with the FCNRB loan issuance or deposit issuance with an exchange swap by Reserve Bank, due to which we got some $32-34 billion coming in, which helped stabilize the rupee, actually appreciated the rupee quite significantly, at one point down to 59 rupees to a dollar, and then it settled at about 62, 63 or thereabouts. So we actually raised debt in the international market. All of you are pretty savvy investors. You know how that money was leveraged internationally. So NRIs who were to put in money into the FCNRB probably put in 5 or 10% of that money on the back of the Reserve Bank of India exchange swap leveraged. And we got about $32-34 billion, which helped stabilize the rupee. But not a bad idea in the short run, helped sober down the economy and the high cost that we were paying for our imports, particularly petroleum imports. And in some sense, in 2014, we inherited an economy which needed to be fixed. We needed to bring down interest rates. We needed to bring down inflation. We needed to set right the fiscal deficit, the current account deficit. We had to address the huge banking crisis that we inherited. Many of you will recall the old days where, as I often jokingly say, small borrowers were bound to repay their loans, but large borrowers never had to worry about repaying their loans. That was a headache of the banks to recover the loan. A big borrower never thought it was his duty to return the loan that he had taken. It became the headache of the banks, who would then resort to evergreening those loans, who would resort to restructuring those loans. And therefore we had a situation where, while the NPA would show small numbers of 3% or thereabouts, the stress in the system was probably close to 10%, accounted for by evergreen loans and restructured loans, which really were not earning the bank any money. but give a false sense of very good performance that the bankers were showing us. At that point of time, Prime Minister Modi decided that he would like to set the entire system right. The systemic issues had to be addressed. We were not looking at band-aid solutions. We were looking at sustainable solutions to transform the economy, to change the way the world looked at India. And you saw over the past 4 years the government addressing the problems inherited by us. We were able to do game-changing reforms in different sectors, particularly in the financial world. You saw an asset quality review being done to reflect the true position of the banks. You saw the introduction of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code to finally start resolving bad bank loans in a time-bound, efficient manner. And just to give you the context, I believe in the old days, through SURFACE and all the various CDR, through DIFR, SURFACE, DRT, an average 4.5 to 5 years was the time taken to recover a bad loan. The cost of recovery was close to 9%. And the average recovery was about 26-27% of the total loan amount. You will, as investment bankers or investors, you will all appreciate that a loan which starts going bad, if addressed quickly, can give you a fair amount of recovery. But the more you delay, on the one hand you are ballooning the loan by passing entries of interest and penal interest and interest on interest, compounding the problem. But secondly, the asset value is also depreciating, given that the asset is not performing to its true full ability. Therefore, the recovery rates were low and the expense on recovery was high, the time taken was high. Our first 32 cases under the IBC have shown a recovery of close to 55% of the amount to be recovered. The cost of recovery has come down to under 1%, and the time taken is about a year to 15 months, 12 to 15 months. I think that's been a game-changing reform that will define the future going forward in terms of banking, in terms of the pressure on borrowers to repay their loan, and in terms of the stability and confidence that we can have in the banking system. My own sense is this will also bring down the cost of bank borrowings, thanks to money being recovered and banks not having to hedge their interest rates with large amounts for non-performing loans. The IMF report that just came out a few days ago very clearly says that we today have a strong macroeconomic fundamentals. We have an economy which can sustain global pressures, and as the trade wars are building up, as the emerging markets are facing some stress, currently oil prices are high. I think despite all these challenges, India does show a glimmer of hope to be able to sustain our growth. All forecasts continue to show us as the world's fastest growing large economy, and I have no doubt in my mind that given the thrust to changing the old way of doing things, the amount of transparency that's been brought in the allocation of natural resources, the strengthening of the banking infrastructure, the way we've been able to take development to the last man at the bottom of the pyramid with an ambitious program to give a house to every citizen by 2022, which has electricity, which has a toilet, which has clean drinking water, which has access through internet, access through road connectivity, good quality healthcare and education in the vicinity, and investments focused towards reaching out all of these benefits, more often than not through the direct benefit transfer route, with the effort for financial inclusion reaching every household in the country, with the effort to have a mobile phone in every citizen's or every resident's hand, with the effort to promote digital transactions and move towards a less cash economy, with the effort to ensure that farmers' income doubles by 2022 and the huge purchasing power that will create in rural India, I am confident that this growth that we are seeing today in the economy is sustainable, will continue to edge up, will probably reach double digits soon, and we can hope to see a decadal or a couple of decades of high growth in the Indian economy, which will, I think, benefit investments in all the spheres. We are seeing capacities getting used up in India now, which means the investment cycle has started to show signs of revival once again. Power is showing very high demand. I was today looking at the huge surge in coal demand, and I can clearly see that power demand, which is an indicator of a revival of economic activity, the amount of investments being made in roads, railways, the airports, building up new airport infrastructure, purchasing new aircrafts, the investments going into the port sector, the investments going in to reach digital infrastructure to every panchayat, every village. All of these things are converging towards making India a strong economy and building up towards a new India where every citizen has a good quality of life. Every young child coming into from the next generation can see a better future for himself, a better future for the environment, a better future for opportunities to work, a more skilled workforce going forward, a nation of persons whose entrepreneurial abilities are respected with the Startup India movement, the Stand Up India movement, through the Mudra movement giving ability to people to have small businesses, seed small businesses, become entrepreneurs, become self-sufficient. I think all in all, we are building up a new India on a foundation of trust and transparency. And I'm confident investors across the world are seeing the way government is working both at the center and in the states towards a better future for every citizen in the country. I believe every international report today reflects the growing strengths of India's economy, the efforts that are being done to reform different sectors like healthcare, like power, like connectivity through digital infrastructure, efforts to reform the taxation structures, the indirect taxes converging into the GST, what Finance Minister Mr. Jaitley just spoke about, bringing down the corporate tax rates to 25% through phasing out of exemptions. We have already done 25% tax on small companies with a turnover of up to about 250 crores. Now the next level of large corporations getting that benefit is being planned. Housing for all is a flagship scheme of this government. The free medical facilities up to 5 lakhs per family for 100 million families is going to be the next step towards a better future for the citizens of India. Agri reforms, be it through insurance, be it through better irrigation, be it through better minimum support prices, all of which converging to doubling of farmers' income and helping rural demand go up, and a continuous effort to bring down indirect tax rates so that we can give a boost to the economy. All of these are our small efforts to transform the Indian economy and make it probably the world's best sustainable and fastest growing economy for the next 2 or 3 decades going forward, so that we can aspire to be a $10 trillion economy over the next 15 or 20 years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patient hearing, and I'll be happy to take a few questions.
Well, firstly, thank you very much indeed, Shri Goyal sir, and what we're going to do now is open the floor for questions. A quick request to our members of the audience. I'm going to request you to please stand up and ask your questions so that our camera people can pan across. So those who have questions to ask, please raise your hands. We'll have the mics passed on to you. Let's take some questions from the audience, please. So if I may request you to please stand
Two
up.
or three questions coming in so that I can, or 3 or 4 questions so I can answer all of them together?
Sure, sir. So firstly, can we take the individual's question here who's standing, sir? Is that okay with you, sir?
Yeah, 3, 4 of them.
Okay. Hi, Piyush Bhai. How are you? I'm not sure if you remember, we met in Delhi last. And I just want to say a couple of things. One is, I really appreciate the initiative you took to update the signaling infrastructure for railways. That was long overdue. And I wanted to find out what else are you planning to do in order to improve the railway network. And the reason for that is, the more we can move on rails, the less we need to use the road system. Thank you.
So what we'll do is then we'll take all questions together. We'll take 4 questions and then we'll have Shri Goyal sir answer them. Can we take the next question as well? So together we'll have Shri Piyush Goyal answer them. Do we have another question as well from the audience? Any more questions? Well, sir, as of now, that's the question for you, sir.
Lovely. Well, gentlemen, in terms of the railway infrastructure, signaling is certainly an important element because it will help us make the railways safer as well as add significant capacity. I don't know if you are aware right now, until a train leaves the previous station, we cannot send the train from the next station on that track because we are using a signaling system which is probably a century old. While in parts we have brought in automatic signaling, but I think a holistic vision on signaling is what was called for and we are planning to invest significantly on that. But apart from that, there are 5 or 6 initiatives that are simultaneously being worked on to make a difference and expand the capacity of the railways, both on the freight side and on the passenger side. So on the one hand, we are looking at the golden quadrilateral and the laterals, which are the most densely populated routes, being taken up for enhancement of speed from its current levels to initially 160 kilometers per hour. We have these sections of railways, some places at 110 kilometers, some places at 130. Within the existing infrastructure, we can move it to 160 at a reasonably low cost, maybe spend about $4 or $5 billion and move them all up to 160, which will add about 40% to the capacity on these highly dense roads. That's one issue that I think is grabbing our attention and we are forming up plans for. The second is we focus on the dedicated freight corridors, Mumbai to Delhi and Delhi to some place short of West Bengal, which are the busy freight routes, which will add significant capacity in terms of the freight movement. And that will also help moving coal in large numbers, which is required for the power plants. In addition to that, we are looking at a couple of more dedicated freight corridors so that our capacity of moving freight can move up to about 2 trillion tons. So I'm quite hopeful that that 2 trillion ton capacity will help us to take care of the needs of the power plants and help us expand more into certain areas where we are losing out to the road network in terms of lack of adequate capacity. In this, the dedicated freight corridors also give us an advantage of higher speed, uninterrupted travel so that we can actually have timetabled freight trains moving cargo in a defined time frame, and being twin track, we'll be able to have two-way movement so that the MPs can also come back faster. Another major effort is on doubling, tripling and quadrupling lines. You'll be amazed to know 160 years after the railways first started, there are large sections on the main corridors which still have some single lines. So Mumbai to Hyderabad, Bangalore or Chennai, all the southern corridors still have sections which are single line, which we discovered in 2014. And we took them up on mission mode to double, and I think by next year end, we'll have all the main lines which will have at least a double line. And you'll appreciate when we move from a single to a double line, it just doesn't double the capacity. It almost quadruples the capacity. Because instead of trains coming on both directions on the same line, you can actually push trains one after the other on both the tracks in different directions. So to my mind, these are some of the steps which will significantly enhance capacity. Almost, I expect this to double the overall capacity of the railways. My own sense is that the additional effort we are doing on mechanizing the track safety inspections, on improving the permanent speed restrictions, reducing permanent speed restrictions, trying to overcome the backlog of rail renewal, overcome the backlog of adequate locomotives, wagons, coaches, all the old backlogs. As we keep completely eliminating these backlogs, we'll be able to actually meet the needs of both passengers and freight consumers with high quality service, timely service, improved punctuality, improved catering, improved cleanliness. My own sense is we'll be able to once again bring back the charm that Indian Railways used to reflect for travel once upon a time.
Well, thank you, sir. I believe we do have some more questions from the audience. So if you may have the mics passed on. Let's take the questions first, as requested by sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I have quite a few questions. First one, when I visited Delhi almost 18 to 24 months back, this question, I asked the same question on what kind of synergy is there between railways, aviation and road ministry. Mr. Suresh Prabhu, who held railways earlier, now responsible for Ministry of Civil Aviation. You are now holding railways. So the answer was not very comfortable at this point, at 18 to 24 months back when we visited Delhi. So I want to know if there is any development between the synergy of these three areas. Secondly, since not too long ago you were acting finance minister as well. So what is your feeling on the GST collection that we are generating right now? We got something in the newspaper that we want at least 1 lakh crore. And we are, as of now, running short of that. So if there is any further information on that. Thirdly, I would love to know your views on India's trade balance, which is probably one of the biggest concerns at this point in time. And lastly, this is not a question, just a suggestion. The erstwhile Planning Commission, which is no longer there, they used to come up with a 5-year plan document. And one of the best things, which at least according to me was the best, was the infra investment and the financing of that investment document which they used to come out, which used to give us a sense of what kind of saving estimates you are estimating, what kind of investment is happening in each infra sector, be it ports, be it railways, roads, etc. That document is missing now. Is it possible if the government, some department could continue to do that exercise? I hope that it is being done at the back end of some of the department. But if it could be made public, it would be really useful for us. Thank you very much.
Sir, we'd also like to inform you we have some more questions. And if you're okay, we'll take more questions from the audience first.
Quickly.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 2 questions. Number 1, previous speakers this evening and in the afternoon also spoke about the increased coal consumption. Considering the fact that India is already the most polluted country on the planet, what is the government's plan and initiative to wean us away from coal towards, let's say, gas and even other solar power or renewable energy sources? And the second question is there actually going to be a plan to link property to Aadhaar card in order to basically uncover a lot of illicit income and assets? Thank you.
Sir, we also have a question from our Joint Managing Director, Mr. Ramdev Agarwal. Sir.
Good evening. I just wanted to know about what is the rate for, now you're in railway, so for Mumbai is in terrible shape right now. Whenever you come your home, you realize that how much time it takes. So, I mean, this city, we need, since you're sitting there, I hope you'll bless the city with wonderful infrastructure. So what are the plans? You can see what is going to be executed. We get to see a lot of things on the paper, but what's really going to happen? And another thing is the PUC divestment. I mean, this government had a promise that government has no business to be in business, but we see very little of any divestment from any of the businesses government is in. So is there any serious thought about it, or is it going to be the second term you'll do it? I would like to have your views. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I reply?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. About the gentleman who asked about synergies between railway roads and airways, I think you may like to add ports to it also. Because when you want to plan the transport in an integrated fashion, the ports would add to that. And frankly, I think the effort that's going on right now is unparalleled in India's history. You look at the railway, for example. The dedicated freight corridors start from JNPT port and take the material right up to the north and then are moving towards the east and will finally connect to Howrah. We're looking at other dedicated freight corridors which will connect the various ports on the eastern periphery, Visakhapatnam, Paradip, and then connecting up to Howrah. So I think on the railway side we are trying to connect in a kind of a quadrilateral and lateral fashion so that the ports and the railways have a synergy between the two. As far as airways are concerned, a new airport is coming up, let's say New Bombay. Already the Chief Minister of Maharashtra has planned the Trans-Harbour link, further road connectivity to the new airport, metro connectivity to the new airport, and in my meeting 4 days back in Mumbai, we decided on a rail connectivity to the new airport coming up in Panvel. So we are looking at developing all the infrastructures in a very holistic fashion. Similarly, between railway and road, we have some large amount of network of highways which are existing and which are coming up. We are looking at working with the road ministry, highway ministry, Mr. Gadkari and I have had 2 rounds of discussion. Now our officials are working with each other to see if whenever a highway is planned, can we have a rail line run parallel to that? Because land acquisition is being done for the highway. A rail line along with that will completely ensure seamless travel between 2 cities. So take for example Mumbai-Nagpur. We have a freeway coming up there. Devendra and I have already discussed whether we could have a semi-high-speed train along the highway. Now the alignment may not be exactly 100% matched because the curvatures in a road are more liberal than they can be on a train system. But largely it would go along with the path of the highway and may need to take some turns which would be different from the highway. Similarly, we have a highway coming up from the Purvanchal Express in UP. Now that has land available with it. We are talking to the UP government if a semi-high-speed rail could be set up along with that in Uttar Pradesh. So I think there's a huge amount of synergies that can be built up. We will need to have train and road connectivity to airports. We will need to have roads and rail working with each other. We will need to have ports connected both with high-quality roads and with high-quality railway. I mean, I don't know if any of you has visited JNPT port maybe 5 or 7 or 10 years ago. I used to be amazed how such a large port could have such lousy roads connecting JNPT port to the rest of the national highway network. But we've been able to change that. So I think there is a focused effort working in tandem with the state governments and the various ministries at the center to truly bring about a holistic development of the transport infrastructure. Your other question on GST collections, I think are very robust. please don't get carried away if any newspaper is suggesting that they are falling short. I'm sure all of you must have been following the path of indirect tax collection for several years now. And you're all aware in the first half, that's April to September, indirect taxes are always on the lower side. So if 100 rupees are collected in the whole year, the first 6 months it's probably closer to 43 or 44 rupees. And the last 6 months when Diwali and the festival seasons come in, the year-end investments of January, February, March come in, that's when about 55 to 57% of the annual indirect taxes are collected. So based on that, I think GST collections are absolutely on track, and I don't foresee any shortfall whatsoever in GST collection. We have also introduced e-way bill during the April, May, June period. So July would be the first month which will show some impact of the e-way bill. We'll have the number out on 31st August, and let's wait and see whether it shows a growth of 2,000-3,000 crores or whatever, which will start showing the impact of e-way bills coming into the system. And this impact will continue to grow over the months. That's what my sense is. So I'm least worried about GST collections falling short this year. In fact, we did an analysis of the fiscal deficit, and I can say with authority that we are well on track to maintain fiscal deficit at targeted 3.3% this year. I don't see any problem in maintaining that. Trade balance is certainly a matter of concern, but that's a global concern. On the one hand, we have these trade wars erupting. On the other hand, oil prices have been high. We do expect a little deterioration in the current account deficit this year. But fortunately, we have robust foreign exchange reserves over $400 billion, and we'll be able to manage that in the current year or in a short period of 2 or 3 years without any significant hiccup when you consider the overall trade and indirect flows also, the remittances, the travel flows and all the other various flows that come into the country, the FDI and stuff like that. So we certainly have a current account deficit issue this year, but we are very well poised thanks to our efforts to strengthen the macroeconomic fundamentals in the last 4 years. So you're well aware we actually built up reserves by nearly $100 billion, which will hold us in good stead in the coming year or two. And you must bear in mind that the $32-34 billion that were collected in FCNRB deposits in 2013 have also been repaid along with interest in our tenure. So in the years 16 and 17, we have repaid that 32-34 billion. So what we had inherited in 2013 to 2014 included what was raised at FCNRB in 2013, which has been fully repaid. And so I often tell my friends that actually if you go to see 2013, the dollar was around 69. Today it's around 70. So in a 5-year period, the depreciation has been almost zero. Considering that 32-34 billion dollars that was raised by FCNRB in 2013 and had brought down or cooled down the dollar-rupee parity has been repaid during this period. And after that repayment also we are still hovering at the 2013 level. So not any serious area of concern or area to panic for any investors or for government. I would totally disagree with the gentleman who spoke about the Planning Commission 5-year plan documents being any good. If they were good, the power sector would not have been in the deep distress that we are in today. If they were making sense, we wouldn't have had overcapacity in almost every sector, due to which the investment cycle has taken such a big beating in the last 3-4 years. So we had an artificial growth in the period 2008 to 12-13, during which huge amounts of capex, unwarranted for the demand projections, but backed with Planning Commission documents which had irrationally projected very high capacities being required. and causing such deep distress to Indian industry. And I think the current system where the DIPP, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, working in tandem with various ministries, works out sector-specific projections. And these are not projections which are cast in iron or based on which banks and all are expected to lend. These are modest projections, more practical, more rooted on the ground with consultation with industry, and are not becoming barometers based on which government is going to invest. I think our barometer is best left to you, the market, to determine what are the sectors and what are the demand requirements that will come up in different sectors. My own sense is the Planning Commission document, just like most government projections, was totally off the mark year after year, and has been one of the causes for the banking stress that we inherited in 2014. But however, not to say that there are absolutely no projections being made, but projections currently coming out of NITI Aayog are far more grounded, far more rooted in reality, and don't make very fantabulous projections which could misguide or mislead investment in different sectors. Coal consumption is certainly going up and should go up, because while we are promoting renewables, and you're well aware, India's Renewable Energy Trust is the biggest and most ambitious plan anywhere in the world. The whole world has stood up and noticed India's five-fold expansion in renewable energy. But as any engineers in the room will appreciate, you can't put renewables into a grid which doesn't have a base load. And for India, the base load is thermal power. It's coal-fed power. And I'm sure at the point where we are growing our economy, at the point where we want to meet the energy needs of industry and citizens in a cost-effective manner, we can't replace coal-based power by, let's say, gas-based power or nuclear power, because that would make power so much more expensive that would become an impediment to India's growth imperatives. And look at the history of any country in the world which has progressed. America, Europe through the Industrial Revolution, China between 1984 and 2014, all countries which have had rapid development and growth, grew their economies, brought development to the last man at the bottom of the pyramid. The cost of energy has been an important element in that. And we will have to continue to keep our cost of energy low. Having said that, we are looking at how we can use coal in a more efficient fashion. We are looking at coal bed methane, we are looking at syngas, we are looking at biofuels and ethanol being developed in a big way. We are seeing how coal can be used in cleaner fashion. We are looking at what we can do to capture the carbon that comes out of coal through carbon capture and possibly reusing that carbon. So various ways to make carbon usage more efficient, and also to take carbon out of the cities which are facing the brunt of the pollution, so that we can promote electric vehicles in the cities, we can promote better management of waste through waste-to-energy plants. All of that is really the way forward to bring down pollution in the cities. We cannot wish away coal or thermal power. For a few more years, that will be the mainstay of India's energy needs until we can once again rediscover large amounts of oil or large amounts of gas in our shores and exploit that at lower values so that we can generate power out of low-cost gas, not at the current prices of gas which make power totally unviable for industry or human consumption. Well, property linking with the Aadhaar card is really left more to the future, because we have to wait for the Supreme Court verdict. The last word has not yet come from the Supreme Court on that. But clearly it will help us to detect benami transactions and also have a fix on where or what property transactions are happening in the ecosystem that will help the income tax department, that will help the stamp duty collections, that will help the GST collections. So clearly a good idea, but waiting for the final word to be said on the Aadhaar being made mandatory. I think